Welcome to the Connectivity Challenge pre-registration webinar. I'm Jenny Adams. I work at Common Pool, the agency that is helping design and manage the challenge. I also have my colleagues Lynn Van Deventer and Ethan Matthews on the phone with me. Additionally, we have from the CSU Salazar Center, Dominique Gomez and Beth Conover, who I will turn things over to in just a moment. A couple of quick housekeeping items. As I mentioned, the webinar is being recorded and will be available shortly after the session. We'll be posting it on the News and Updates website, as well as can email it out. We do ask that you please keep yourself on mute throughout the duration of the webinar. We'll have a Q&A session a little bit later, and you can enter any questions or comments you may have in the chat box feature within the webinar technology. We have a brief agenda for this call. It'll include some background from the Salazar Center. Then I will do a short walkthrough of the competition website with my colleague Ethan. And then we will open it up for questions. Again, we please ask that you keep yourself on mute and enter any questions you have in the chat box. And with that, I will turn things over to Dominique Gomez.
Thank you so much, Jenny, and thank you everyone for joining today. Excited to see so many people interested in the Connectivity Challenge. My name is Dominique Gomez, and I'm representing the Salazar Center for North American Conservation here at Colorado State University. And I have my two colleagues, Beth Conover and Katie Bamer, also here on the line. The Colorado State University Salazar Center supports and advances the health and connectivity of the natural systems and landscapes of North America. We know that healthy natural systems support climate adaptation and resilience, protect biodiversity, and support long-term human health. And we take an intersectional approach that builds bridges that connect academic research, community practice, and policy development. And we definitely invite you to learn more about us at our website, which is salazarcenter.colostate.edu. And we're very excited to talk to you today a little bit about the Connectivity Challenge and hopefully answer any questions that you have. The Connectivity Challenge is actually the first prize in what will be an annual prize that is run by the Salazar Center called the Conservation Impact Prize. That's sort of the parent organization that all of these challenges will fall under. And unlike reward prizes that recognize work done in the past, this Impact Prize is an incentive award. So we've designed it to really encourage new and creative thinking to solve big challenges in North American conservation. And the topic of each challenge will alternate from year to year. We're very excited to have our first prize be the Connectivity Challenge, where we want to reward creative thinking that supports healthy, connected landscapes throughout North America. And we really hope that teams will bring together research, policy, and practice expertise. As you all have probably realized as you've looked through the website, we're not prescribing specific types of activity. We hope to encourage new ideas to address the challenge of landscape connectivity from a variety of perspectives. And we know that the best ideas may be breakthroughs in the collection and application of data, maybe cross-border governance structures, communications, public engagement, all sorts of different things. We're really excited to think outside the box and hear and listen from you. So with that, we're excited to have all of you join today and to answer your questions. And with that, I want to hand it back to Jenny with our partner, the Common Pool, and she will take it from there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dominique. Okay, next we will walk through a few key pages on the website. If you haven't already clicked around and explored the Connectivity Challenge website, we definitely encourage you to do so. There's a lot of great and helpful information on the website. Right now, in the next few minutes, I really just want to focus specifically on what makes the Connectivity Challenge unique, and that is really our focus on providing an open, transparent, and fair process. You know, obviously, when you are interested in something, you'd like to know what is required of you, and so we do share the entire application on the front-facing website. So Ethan is navigating there right now. If you go to the menu and select application, you can see exactly what is required of you before you even register. You know, we obviously do this with a reason. You know, we want full transparency on what we're looking for from any participants. You'll see the different sections, the different requirements, the different components of what an application would entail. And this is the exact same application that registrants will complete on the back end of the system once they do complete that registration. Next, participants often want to know and understand how they will be evaluated. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. If everyone can just make sure they're on mute, that would be helpful. Thank you. So yes, under scoring process here in the menu, we have the trait scoring rubric. And we provide, again, full transparency of exactly how your application will be evaluated. You can definitely go to this page and kind of click around, but you will see the 4 traits that we have here, which are integrated, impactful, feasible, and compelling. And for each of these 4 traits, you can use this sliding scale and toggle back and forth and see a definition for each of the sub-scoring range definitions. So we are very specific about if you receive, you know, a 2.3, for example, you know, you can read an example definition of what that might entail. So next, after the trait scoring rubric, we also provide under the scoring menu the information about a level playing field. This is our normalization process, and Ethan, yes, you can just please pull up the level playing field. And so this is very helpful because it helps explain how everyone is treated fairly and how we ensure fairness throughout the scoring process. For example, you know, different judges might score a little differently. One application might receive a judge that always scores very easy and gives 4s and 5s. Another, you know, might have a judge that scores a bit harder and only gives 1s and 2s. So this level playing field normalization algorithm explains how our algorithm works and ensures that everyone is treated fairly. And we're happy to answer any questions anyone has about that, but we do encourage you to read through it if you are interested in learning more. And finally, after you know what is required of you and how you are evaluated, often the next question is who will do the evaluation. So we also have a Meet the Judges page. And this is great because it allows you to see exactly who is part of the evaluation panel. We provide headshots and short biographies for each of the judges. So you can read through, kind of get a good understanding of the types of people and organizations represented that will be reading through your application. So again, that is a brief overview. We encourage you to click around on the site, read more of the information available, but it really is our approach to providing a fair, open, and transparent process for the Connectivity Challenge. And I think with that, we are ready to jump into the Q&A portion. Again, please keep yourself on mute, and any questions you may have for us, you can enter in the chat box, and we can go ahead and read them off and then provide an answer. And I do have a few to get us started while everyone's thinking of their questions and typing them in the chat box now. Okay, we'll just start with a few that we have from people that have submitted earlier. First question. Could funds go toward hiring a postdoc on the project?
Yes, this is Dominique from the Salazar. So yes, certainly to hire someone as part of your project, that is an allowable expense. So that is certainly something that would be allowable as part of your project budget and expense.
Wonderful, thank you. Next question we had earlier submitted. Is there a priority for projects or partnerships you are wanting to invest in, or are you open to funding different phases of projects?
Another great question. So there is not a priority, and sorry, can you repeat the question? It was what phase of the project are we most interested in?
Yes, are you open to funding different phases of projects?
Yes, so we are certainly open to funding different phases of project. That being said, as Jenny talked about earlier, I think I would take a really close look at the criteria that you'll be judged on. So we're really looking for impactful projects that can lead to transformative change. So to the extent that the project itself is going to be at a stage that you can really show impact and really just review that rubric, I think that's going to be something that's important. So certainly it could be the beginning of a project, it could be the middle and end, but you'll want to look at that rubric to see how you're going to be scored to have sort of the best possible project in front of you.
Wonderful, thank you. We have a couple questions coming in the chat box, kind of around geography. Are you prioritizing projects that cross state boundaries, or are projects focused on a single state or region?
Great question. So we would love to see projects that do cross boundaries, but there's not a specific rubric item around that. So there's not necessarily a way for our esteemed judges to give extra points. So if it is in a specific region or if it does cross boundaries, either is certainly allowable. I think the way that you might see some of that come up is the innovation. So if you see something that's innovative, and if everyone can mute themselves, we're having a lot of background noise.
You're hearing
the background noise. If you can, then that will be something that you might want to think about. But there's not a specific need to be cross-border or within a specific state. It just needs to be within North America.
Great, thank you. And just to confirm the question, that question was about state boundaries. Another person is asking about international boundaries, so I'm assuming the same thing applies across country borders as well.
Yes, that's right. So I think if it is across country borders, and that might be something that would get some extra points for innovation and a few other things on the rubric, but there's not a specific requirement that it cross borders.
Great, thank you. Next question, could the funds be used to fund ongoing connectivity programs?
So to the extent that it could lead to transformative change or maybe prove out a theory or show clear impact, then yes. That being said, this project or this prize is not really meant to just fund ongoing operations. So you would have to be able to show why that's an important part of the overall application. So I would say that it's certainly an allowable expense, but it would need to be really carefully thought about why that's important to be a high scoring project.
Great, thank you. Next question is about costs and budget. What indirect cost rates are allowable?
So we have not set any specific indirect costs or limited sort of overhead rates. If you could look through the rules, you won't see that there's any specific rates there. That being said, one of the criteria is certainly, looking at how you're using your expenses. And so, we will want to see that the money is going to be well spent and is going to lead to the most impact possible. So, if we see that there's a lot of money that's being spent on expenses that are not really directly related to the project or not necessarily pushing the project forward, it probably won't score quite as highly in some of those ways. So it's, $100,000 is in some ways a lot of money and in some ways not so much money. So you'll want to see that it's being spent well, but there's not a specific indirect or overhead rate noted.
Great, thank you. Here's a quick eligibility question. This person is from Mexico and works at a public not-for-profit university. Are they qualified to apply?
Yes, so certainly we are excited to have applicants from across the US, Canada, and Mexico. And it sounds like based on the description, a not-for-profit university would certainly meet the criteria as an eligible organization.
Wonderful, thank you. Next question, what is the protocol if an application comes from an organization that one of the judges is also from?
That is a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. So I might actually leave this a little bit to Common Pool because one of the more important things that we thought about and one of the reasons we're working with Common Pool is that level playing field. So we wanted to make sure that all the applicants get something back, and we think that being able to be scored by a knowledgeable expert in the field and actually a number of knowledgeable experts in the field and get feedback from them is one of the really valuable things that all applicants will receive. But we do realize that the people that we've chosen are experts in the field and thus have many connections to people who might be applying. And so there is a process in place to make sure that no judge would be rating any application that involves any organization that they might have some connection or conflict of interest with. So Jenny, do you mind actually stepping in, talking a little bit about how that typically happens?
Sure. And Lynn, do you mind starting, and then I can continue as well?
I don't mind at all. So hello, everyone. This is Lynn Van Diemender with Common Pool. So our judging module allows for judges to automatically recuse themselves. So in terms of conflict of interest. So if during the training of the judges, we talk to them about what that means. And typically that means just because you know someone or have met them at a conference or, you know, perhaps have had conversations with them does not mean a judge needs to recuse themselves from that particular application. It's a much closer relationship. So if they serve on a board of an organization or their spouse works there, etc. In this particular conversation about, in this particular example here, whether the application actually comes from an organization that one of the judges is also from, we'll actually have to look at that on a case-by-case basis with Beth and Dominique. You know, we don't want our judges to be on the application team. And it also depends on the size of the organization. So obviously, if it's a fairly large organization with multiple divisions and the judge may work in a different division, that won't be an issue. But actually, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to send kind of the specifics of your question to questions@connectivitychallenge.org, and we can get a look at that more closely for you. Dominique, anything else you want to say about that in terms of conflict of interest?
No, only that we have the most confidence in our judges, and we know that they will be very scrupulous when it comes to thinking about whether or not they should be judging in a specific application. If you have any specific concerns, you can certainly submit those, but otherwise, just because you know one of the judges or maybe a few of the judges, don't be too concerned. As Lynn said, we will make sure to address any conflicts of interest.
Great, thank you both for that detailed answer. And yes, if there are any follow-up questions on that topic, please do submit that question to our questions email, and we can provide more information. The next question, I believe, is a follow-up to the indirect cost rates question, and they're just asking, are there any match requirements?
Great question. So there are not any specific match requirements. That being said, again, if you look at the rubric, there are a few different of the specific requirements that might be lend themselves to higher scores if you do have additional funding available from some other source. So certainly just looking at impact, if you have money available from some other source, you might be able to get more done. Or if you look at the feasibility, just depending on the scope of your project, it might be more feasible if you're able to show that you already have some money going from some other source. And then lastly, compelling, we're looking at how you can attract participation from in and outside your target community. And so some of that might certainly be if you're able to show financial support from partners or others that you might need to bring into the project. So no specific match requirements. That being said, that might be able to get your project a little bit further down the line.
Great, thank you, Dominique. Here is a question, again, kind of about judge background and expertise. It's a little long, so I'll read the whole thing, and then we can repeat if needed. Our proposal is highly focused on Indigenous-led conservation. We noticed that none of the judge profiles demonstrate experience in Indigenous-led conservation. We recognize that the Salazar Center itself does have this area of expertise. What might be done to support judges in areas where they may need support?
That is a great question, and thank you for it. So a few things I want to start with. So first, thank you so much for looking at our judges. This is actually just an initial group of judges that we wanted to make sure to have up on the website. We actually are still recruiting and have a few additional judges that have actually agreed to participate in this. And so you will see a final list of judges sometime around the final date. So we want to make sure we have enough judges to view all the applications that are coming in. So certainly this is some, but not all of the judges that will be involved in the Connectivity Challenge. The second point is thank you for pointing out, we do want to make sure we have a good diversity of judges, and that means we take the word diversity in many different ways, that they represent diverse experiences, diverse racial and ethnic backgrounds, diverse geographies, different sectors, etc. And so we are thinking about that as we recruit judges. But lastly, certainly not every judge will be able to have expertise in every field. So that's always going to be the case. That being said, every judge that we've selected, we know has a really good background that we think lends themselves to be able to look at these specific criteria and view any individual application with these criteria in mind. So we are not too worried just because a judge hasn't specifically worked on one, within one area, that they won't be able to offer valuable feedback and input to us. We also think that the Common Pool approach that makes sure each application is scored by separate judges. I believe it's 5, is that right? Jenny, I'm all of a sudden making sure that 5 is the correct number.
That is correct.
Yes, so each application will be scored by 5 different judges. So we know that there is power in numbers, and so having that diversity of 5 different people looking at this will make sure that we really get a good rounded sense of the application and how it compares to other applicants, et cetera. So thank you so much for the question. We're not too concerned just because any individual judge doesn't have a specific background doesn't mean that they're not able to offer some valuable expertise. And that being said, we will make sure that our judging group does really represent a good diversity of experiences and perspectives.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dominique, for that answer. Next question, will you accept multiple applications from the same organization, such as a global organization that has state-based chapters?
That is a great question. So yes, we will accept multiple applications from one organization. So we know that some organizations are very large and have multiple different chapters that may not necessarily really work with each other. So that is certainly fine. That being said, you cannot have one primary contact submit more than one application. So you would want to make sure that there's not heavy overlap in terms of the key personnel that are working on any one application. So just because you have the kind of the larger parent group in common, that's fine, but you would just want to make sure that it's not the same people submitting more than one application.
And just to add to that, kind of from a technical standpoint, each registration can only submit one application. So just as Dominique just said, you'd need multiple registrants from that organization to complete registration and actually submit the application online. Next question, does the ability to fund a position include an AmeriCorps knowing it's a federal volunteer position?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not exactly sure how to answer it. Certainly to some earlier questions, funding people who are working on the ground, who are actually implementing a program or maybe involving some research is certainly allowable. I would read through the rules criteria to make sure that you know, there's nothing in there that you're concerned about specifically, but in terms of funding staff members, that is certainly allowable from our standpoint. I am not particularly familiar with how AmeriCorps works, and so I'm not sure how funding has to be allocated there, but if it just means funding someone on the ground, then that's certainly an allowable expense.
And definitely, if there are more details to provide regarding that question, you can submit it to questions@connectivitychallenge.org, and we can work with you directly as well. Okay, next question. Human dimensions of conservation challenges seem to be a key focus in the rubric. Will you consider wildlife-focused proposals if they address human elements, a complex landscape scale conservation issue?
Great question. So yes, we certainly do not necessarily need things to be just human focused, and wildlife is very important. And so we know that the impact of landscape connectivity is important for habitat for wildlife as well as supporting human communities. So to the extent that you can show the importance of your project for habitat and for wildlife, that is certainly an exciting piece. And I think that you'll see that many of the scoring rubric elements can give points to that. So wildlife is very important as well.
Great, thank you, Dominique. Going back to a question that was we received earlier, what is your thinking about the balance of effort on the part of the applicant versus the opportunity for one prize winner? In other words, are there other benefits to applying that may justify the time and effort on the part of multiple organizations and institutions?
Yes, I'm so glad someone asked this question. So one of the reasons that we designed the prize as we did is that we are really hoping to provide benefit to all applicants and not just to the one prize that is able to take the actual funds and implement. And so there's a few ways that we are hoping to do that. The first is in the judging process. So as we've talked about, you will be judged by 5 separate esteemed professionals who work in this field, who will give you valuable feedback that we hope will strengthen your proposal for future use. And we really hope that that really offers some value just in by itself. A second piece is that we will invite a number of finalists to come pitch at an event in September in Denver, and that event itself will give some visibility and some opportunities for networking to all the finalists as well as to the actual winner. And then lastly, and this is still a little bit to be determined, but we are also hoping to the extent that you are interested in this, in featuring all applications in some way in the future. If you are interested in sharing more about your proposals in the future, once we've actually chosen a finalist, we will be working with Common Pool on a web page that will feature the Connectivity Challenge and what sorts of proposals and ideas were generated. And that might be a good opportunity in the future to get further exposure for your idea and for your work. Of course, that will be something that we will work with you all individually on. It's not something that you have to do if there's concerns about that, but it will be an opportunity to continue to feature your work. So I hope between all of those things, those will be things that will be of value to you. The other piece is that we've really tried to work hard to make sure that this proposal process is not overly onerous. So to the extent that you might be proposing this to other grant applications or other opportunities, we really think that the questions that we're asking are things that are just central to really putting together a cohesive proposal, and hopefully it's something that you're thinking through in any case.
And Dominique, do you mind if I just add on to that? So I agree 100% with what Dominique has said, and it's really kind of been the intentional design of the competition to support and provide value for everyone who participates that may not win. I just want to add on is that, so we work with a lot of different clients in many different fields, and one of the consistent pieces of feedback that we have gotten from participants who haven't gone on to win a particular grant is that they consistently tell us that the process has helped them hone their message, helps them with their overall organizational strategy in some cases, and that they have actually gone on to revise their kind of their pitch and their proposal based on the feedback that they received, and then have gone on to receive funding from other opportunities. So we're really hopeful, and that is really our goal with this competition is that even if you participate and you aren't the winner, that you'll receive that value.
Wonderful.
Great.
Thank you, Lynn and Dominique, for that great, thorough answer. Next question, switching gears a little bit here in terms of some technical questions. One question that was submitted earlier, can you please provide input on the expectation of the quality of the video? So there is a video requirement as part of the application, and Ethan, maybe you can just pull up the application page. I believe there are some guidelines on the video. But yeah, Lynn, if you want to go ahead and start us off with video guidelines.
This is Dominique. I can speak to it too if Lynn doesn't want to.
Sorry, I was on mute, Dominique. Go ahead.
Okay, yes. So I think this is a great question. As Jenny and Ethan have showed, there's some good guidelines here on the video presentation, but I really want to emphasize what is underlined there, which is this does not need to be a professionally designed video. So what we're really looking for is a short video. It's no more than 90 seconds that just talks about and explains your project. This can be something that you do in your office, with one other person. It doesn't need to be professional. It doesn't need to have anything too fancy. What we really want to just see is your passion for the project. So we do have a few specific requirements on the more technical side. So it must be in English. If you are speaking another language, which is welcome, we ask you to subtitle. And it must be captioned, which is a fairly easy thing to do. There's some instructions on how to use YouTube automatic captioning. Beyond that, there's not really many requirements. So feel free to, use your smartphone, hold it out, have someone just film you talking about the project, and that's it. All we really want to see is your passion. We're not expecting, an Oscar-worthy documentary here.
Great, thank you, Dominique. Next question submitted in the chat box. Are you prioritizing proposals that are led by underrepresented, under-resourced, and underserved groups or communities?
Another great question. So I would say that some of the rubric will speak to this. So while we're not necessarily explicitly prioritizing applications that are led by these groups, you will see, especially in the scoring in under compelling, we're really looking for stakeholders that are diverse and that really push the equitable and kind of effectiveness of your project. So if you look at the compelling points, you'll see that there will be some points, especially for a meaningful and deep understanding of your community and a broad range of participation. And so you'll see that I think there's extra points available for projects that really show that that deep participation and diverse participation. And so that might be one place where you're able to show a stronger application.
Great, thank you. Next question, kind of around eligibility. What role can a private organization play in a connectivity challenge project if they are partnered with the nonprofit principal organization?
A great question. So per the eligibility, the primary applicant does need to fit within that 501c3 or similar designation, but you can be partnered with other organizations. So you can be partnered with educational groups, you can be partnered with other private organizations. So we really look for interesting and innovative partnerships. So we're very open to private companies participating as well.
Wonderful. And yes, Ethan has up on the screen right now, we just encourage you to read through the rules and eligibility requirements just to make sure that you meet any requirements that we've outlined. Next question related to the budget. Does the budget need to be exactly $100,000? The website says not less.
Good question. So the prize itself will be exactly $100,000. So that is the amount that if you are the winner of the Connectivity Challenge, you will receive from us. That being said, per earlier questions, you can certainly show how your overall project has other funding available, or kind of other components that are funded through other organizations. So what we want to see is that the budget that you are proposing has a clear $100,000 component from us, and not less. So if you're only saying you need $50,000 from us and that's all that's really needed, that's probably not going to really fit what we're looking for. You can certainly show that your overall project needs more than 100,000, but that the balance is coming from other organizations. So we really want to see that $100,000 coming from the Connectivity Challenge in your budget.
And Dominique, this is Lynn. Just to add to that, when you go to actually submit your application, you will only be allowed to enter something that totals $100,000. And we'll be doing a second webinar between the registration and the submission deadline, where we'll show you tips and tricks for entering the application, and certainly we'll talk about entering the budget at that point. And while I have the mic, I'm just going to say, and as a reminder, if you haven't already registered, please do so no later than Thursday, March 19th, 2020, and coming up in a couple of weeks here at 5 p.m. Mountain. Only registered organizations may apply, so please do not miss that deadline.
Thank you, Lynn, for the reminder. Next question, is there a maximum duration for the project?
That is a great question. So I'm not actually sure if this is covered somewhere specifically on the website, and Jenny or Ethan, if you know, I don't think that it's under the rules, but we are looking for projects that can be completed in 2 years or less, I believe. So we are not necessarily looking for something that's going to last 5 or 10 years. We're looking for something that is going to show some impact more immediately. So really a year to 2 years at most.
Great, thank you. Next question is a little long, so I'll go ahead and read through it, and again, can repeat if we need to. This person is asking, I understand that the project results must be relevant to North America. Is it acceptable for a project to have a goal of helping North America learn from connectivity efforts such as Natura 2000 in Europe, the South Africa Biodiversity Planning Act that is mapping corridors in every municipality, the Tanzania Wildlife Corridor Act, and Bhutan's effort to connect all 9 of its protected areas to each other and to protect areas in neighboring nations?
Good question. So what we really want to see is projects that primarily take place in North America. So and more specifically in the US, Canada, or Mexico. Certainly if your project is taking place in one of those 3 countries, but brings in knowledge or lessons learned from outside of those 3 countries, that's wonderful. But a project that does not really have a clear component within those 3 countries is not going to be is not going to meet the criteria. So certainly lessons learned from outside those 3 countries are wonderful, but the project really needs to primarily take place and the funding needs to be used within these 3 countries.
Wonderful, thank you, Dominique. Just a reminder, if anyone has any other questions, you can enter them into the chat box now. We have a few minutes left and can definitely answer a few more questions as they come in. While we're just waiting a few minutes to see if there's anything else, Ethan, do you mind just bringing up the timeline? We can just quickly kind of walk through what next steps look like. So as Lynn and we have mentioned here, the registration deadline is the next key milestone here. Everyone that would like to submit an application must register prior to this registration deadline at 5 p.m. Mountain on Thursday, March 19th, 2020. After the registration deadline, you'll then have an additional 4 weeks to submit your application. And again, we'll host a second webinar between these two deadlines. So we will provide more specific information on completing your application. But applications will be due by April 16th, 2020 at 5 p.m. Mountain. And then after the application submission deadline, we go through the review process. So we have this timeline available for anyone that would like to look out further for next steps. But again, the key date right now is that registration deadline on Thursday, March 19th. Okay, a couple more questions have come in. The application seems to be divided between the first part where creative projects are described and the second part that seems to apply to a more rigorous scientific project. I guess they're asking if that is the case.
So let's see, the application seems to be divided between the first part where creative projects are described and the second part that seem to apply more to a rigorous scientific project. I'm not really sure what the question is there. I would say that maybe I just can go back to our criteria. So certainly we're looking to combine research, policy, and practice. So we're looking for something that is compelling and impactful. So I would say that both some clear science and some creativity are probably necessary for any project. We're not necessarily looking for something that's just a research project. It's got to show clear impact. But to the extent that it is more creative, we hope that it is, rooted in clear research and outcomes as well. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I hope it does.
Wonderful, thank you, Dominique. Next question, do you want to see a plan for continued support or long-term sustainability of the proposed project?
That's a great question, and I go back to the trait scoring rubric again. So we do want to see that impact in sort of the time frame that we're looking at again, so that 1 to 2 years, and we want to see that it's feasible that you actually get that impact in that period. So projects that need ongoing support and that really don't have that clear transformative opportunity within that short time frame might not score as well. That being said, if you have something that shows that impact but then continues on and you have a way to fund it, that's wonderful. We are not able to offer kind of ongoing funding. This is a one-time prize award. I hope that answers it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, we've got a few minutes left, so any other questions you can enter now. And of course, if you think of a question after the webinar, you can definitely submit it to questions@connectivitychallenge.org. We've also posted that email address in the chat box, and we'll definitely get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, if no one has any other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up a few minutes early. Dominique, I don't know if you have any closing words for everyone, but yeah, I think this hopefully was helpful and useful for everyone that attended.
Yes, I want to thank everyone for your time and for your interest in the Connectivity Challenge. We're so excited to have all of you interested, and we're very, very excited to see those applications. As Lynn and Jenny have stressed, please, if you have not already registered, you must register first. That's the first step. So March 19th is the deadline. Once you've registered, you still have a few weeks to actually get your application in. But if you do not register before the deadline, you cannot apply. So please make sure to register. Even if you're still on the fence whether or not to apply, please just go ahead and register so that you have that opportunity. As they mentioned, you can submit questions after this webinar through questions@connectivitychallenge.org. questions@connectivitychallenge.org. We try and answer those pretty quickly, so make sure you get those questions in. And Jenny, I think maybe you can just share a little bit about that. We'll have another webinar for people who have registered and are looking to apply. And so hopefully we'll see many of you then.
Great, thank you, Dominique. And yes, as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, this webinar was recorded, and this recording will be available in the next few days or so. It'll be posted on the website. And yes, we will be holding one additional webinar towards the end of the month in preparation for answering any questions you have about the actual application. And again, just to stress one final time, please register if you have not already, as that is required, and only registrants will be able to participate in the second webinar and complete an application. So thank you very much.
Thank you all. Have a good one.